The farm we are building is in the Lakes region of the Northeast Kingdom in the Green Mountain State, where the Abenaki people developed the art of maple syrup production. The property overlooks the Pensioner Pond, which, ironically, looks a lot like a germinating seed. We are on the southeast side of Dane Hill, overlooking the pond and the mountains beyond. Our land has 10.5 acres, 3 of which is cleared, and the rest is maple forest filled with living and material capital. The water that runs through our land drains to the Pensioner Pond, up the Clyde River to Lake Memphremagog, along the St. Lawrence River, and ultimately to the Atlantic Ocean. We are fortunate to have 4 variably productive springs on our land that are uphill from the house and the farm. 2 springs are unmanaged at the top of our property and may be connected with the lower spring water system in the future. The old Woodbox Spring is a 2 by 10 foot wooden cow trough built in the 1960s. This can be left as is and can be used for watering animals on future silvopasture. The Hemlock Spring has a spring box and a 225-gallon IBC storage tank. This season I'll connect it to the house with 600 feet of 1-inch water pipe. The water tank's about 90 feet above the house, which will yield about 40 psi of pressure, and can therefore be used with the existing flush toilet system in the house, as well as watering crops. We have a 55-gallon rain catchment system off of the powerhouse roof that supplies maybe 15 psi of water service to the fruit orchard downhill in the lowland. We will expand our house roof catchment systems in the future to supply the downhill vineyard and annual crops with low-pressure water service. Over several years, we observed erosion patterns developing on our gravel driveway. Renting an excavator, I dug a ditch along the southeast side to facilitate drainage. The upper part of the driveway ditch runoff could possibly be diverted to the food forest and infiltrated into the soil. The lower part of the driveway ditch levels off a bit and will be used to water a windbreak of hazelburt, elderberry, and sea buckthorn planted into the ditch mound with an appropriate guild of supporting plants. At the bottom of the driveway, along the state road, is a gully where we find apple, willow, and hops growing freely and abundantly, an echo of Vermont's past. We will be remanaging these species by pruning, grafting, and harvesting their abundance. Vehicle access is achieved with a 400-foot long steep gravel driveway. There is an old logging road I've cleared and maintained over the years. It stretches up from the garage lot to the Hemlock Stream. I hope to bridge this gap in the future to continue the road to better access the material capital of the highland. Access from the house to the orchards and gardens is achieved with the crop path that passes by the annual garden, the future food forest, and to the fruit orchard. The future barn will be the hub of daily activity and will be easily accessed from the farmhouse just 60 feet away. The 1,500 square foot farmhouse is an A-frame with 3 floors flanked by balconies to facilitate construction and maintenance. It has a full basement and an attached solarium and nursery, or a nursolarium. The powerhouse is a shed-roofed structure that houses the 200-amp grid power generated by the damming up of the pond. The powerhouse also temporarily houses the chickens until we build the barn. The barn will eventually house sheep, pigs, goats, and chickens, as well as the hay to support them. This will also house a separate composting and charcoal center. It'll be built somewhat passive solar, bringing in light and storing heat in water barrels exposed to southern sunlight. A farm stand will be built to sell surplus products in the future. This would be a crucial interface for us with the surrounding community and would boost our social capital. It would also increase financial capital. We can define 6 zones on our land, including the house, as Zone 0. The home was designed to produce, store, and process food, as well as provide shelter and comfort for the farmers. It has built-in facilities such as an ample kitchen, pantry, root cellar, workshop, and off-kitchen greens nursery. A newly enclosed 520 square foot nursolarium is attached to the south side of the house. Glazed with polycarbonate hurricane panels, it can maximize solar gain, especially at noon on the winter solstice. It will heat water in barrels as thermal mass and then release that heat at night, governing temperature swings in the room. Under the angled windows, we will nurse plants to maturity for the farm and future nursery business. A climate battery will be built into a large garden bed built under the polycarbonate windows to help harvest heat and remove humidity from the room. Zone 1 will have two components: a duck-patrolled kitchen garden for fresh, easy-access crops, and around the corner is the barn and barnyard and the daily animal husbandry activities. Our Zone 2 vineyard will grow 2 red and 2 white North Hardy varieties developed at the University of Minnesota. We will also expand and experiment later with some varieties above our zone as the climate warms. Zone 2 also includes our root cellar garden with its cedar log raised beds just downhill of the kitchen garden. Here we grow food for winter storage. We will also raise meat birds on pasture and chicken tractors on the grass. We'll have a small orchard of 6 fruit trees near the barn, which could not only serve the house with fresh fruit, but also feed the animals conveniently. The apiary will be located in the center of mass of all orchards so that there is an equal distance between them for pollination. Our septic mound is at the bottom of the hill, and we plant sunflower and amaranth there for chicken feed. We are growing shiitake, blue oyster, and pearl mushrooms in a shaded mushroom center. The main food forest will be a 7-layered guild of compatible edible species. We have begun propagating the plants we already have and will store them in the nurseolarium for planting this fall. We will gather the remaining plants over the spring and summer. The overstory layer of the forest will be a staggered line of 20 apple and pear trees accompanied by an understory of fast-growing, nitrogen-fixing, insect-attracting, fence post-producing black locust, ultimately destined for pollarding. The shrub layer will consist of nitrogen-fixing, sea buckthorn, currant, and blueberry. In the herbaceous realm, the dynamic accumulators comfrey and rhubarb will double date with yarrow and parsley for insect control. Ground cover like oregano, St. John's wort, alpine strawberry, chives, and even yarrow will shade the moist soil. In the root layer, species like carrot and Jerusalem artichoke will dynamically accumulate nutrients for its neighbors. Hops and black bean can vine up the trees for an extra yield in the final vining layer. Our Zone 4 consists of the upper Midland sugar bush and will be managed for possible future wildfire, firewood, and eventually silvopasture. The highlands, our Zone 5, will remain unmanaged for now, but could be harvested for material capital if we can bridge the Hemlock Marsh and extend the logging road. The sector analysis observes the energy flowing through a property. On the winter solstice of 2021, the sun will rise at 7:23 a.m. and set at 4:10 p.m. On the summer solstice, the sun rises at 5:02 a.m. and sets at 8:39 p.m. There is a southeastern wind that builds across the mile-long fetch of Pensioner Pond. It is channeled into a high-pressure bottleneck by our 56 feet of continuous roofline, where energy can be captured with a wind turbine in the near future. At night, the direction shifts to the ever-prevailing northeast winds, which we are fortunately sheltered by the forested hill behind our house. Water flows down the hill from rain and springs, but is channeled away from the main farm areas. The house is built on a ridge, which avoids many runoff issues. Although Vermont's climate today is very moist, we have begun the management of our forest for fire, clearing ground brush, etc. This is a parallel effort to our plans for silvopasture, which has a fire management side effect. The cold northwesterly winds come fresh out of Canada. Just behind our farm is a forested hill to the northwest that serves as a shelter belt. When the barn is built, it will act as a 40-foot-long barrier for the farmhouse to the cold air rolling down the hill in the evening. We don't really have a hot air problem yet, but I'd imagine it would come with the daytime winds, which are from the south and southeast in the future. We chose this location with pollution in mind 9 years ago. The summer winds come from the west-southwest, and there are no nearby cities of note. However, in the winter, the prevailing winds shift to coming from the west-northwest, and that lines us up with Montreal, an industrial city that is also a top-shelf nuclear target. We have little in the way of visual pollution in Vermont in general, no billboards, etc. Though on our land we do have a set of power lines that blocks our view of the lake and mountains to the southeast. There is a seasonal cabin we share the ridge with, but there's no need to block that for now. The property is divided into 3 main areas. Starting at the highest elevation, the highland has an average altitude of 1,448 feet and faces east-northeast with an average slope of about 26%. The midland has an average altitude of 1,309 feet and faces northeast with an average slope of 35%. The lowland has an average altitude of 1,215 feet and faces east-northeast with an average slope of just 18%. We have pretty hilly terrain, but we make our paths on contour as much as possible and level out the production areas as much as we can. In general, our farm faces east, which makes it a morning farm. Our day is shortened not only by latitude 45, but by the hill we're perched on, swallowing up our sunsets. This challenge is a motivator to capture as much sun as possible with hard work, passive solar technology, and permaculture ethics and principles.